But the same way in athletics that there's a big difference between the pro athlete and your amateur athlete, there
Hmm.
is a big difference between like your Olympiad of
Yeah.
entrepreneurship relative to most of us mortals.
And I think if in a good comparison, I was actually having a conversation with a friend. We play squash together and we were just talking about footballers. And like there are so many amateurs that are better than your middle of the range professional footballers on the natural skill. But what they didn't have was that mindset, that
Hmm.
ethic, that, you know, way to look at becoming a footballer if you kind of compare it to being an entrepreneur. So what you're saying is this individual, these Olympian grade, they just have that very different focus mindset that gets them from the amateur, the mid-level business leader to your 8, 9 figure exiters.
Exactly. I mean, there's also like that competitive nature
Yeah.
that's inside of people. So you're also trying to gauge that competitiveness, that will, and that drive. Because let's be honest, entrepreneurship is very hard. If you want an easy path, go get a salary. But if you want to take on something that has the potential of giving outsized reward, if you're willing to tolerate and survive through the difficulties. And so it's a
Mhm.
matter of like who is actually going to end up doing that. So interestingly enough, we find that, and there's data, and I don't have the specific statistics at the top of my head, but there is some research that was out there that
Mhm.
was studying college athletes, ex-military,
Mhm.
people that have shown the drive and dedication to surpass
Is
a
it the
number of
grit?
complicated endeavors.
Is it the grit? I think there was a grit standard where someone who was just like 1 point above on the grit level would more likely get into the Navy SEALs than someone who's just like 1% lower. It was something that I was saying.
But that's related, but not the same as what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody did research on founders
Okay.
and correlated it with there's an outsized representation of former athletes and ex-military that have been successful. They're
Mhm.
concentrated in certain fields that are relevant to them.
Yeah.
But there's also the aspect of like, I mean, if you're trying, and I like the sports analogy because if you're trying to
Yeah.
become good, you're constantly iterating and revising your approach. If you think about playing football on the pitch, you have to understand fairly complicated dynamics. I mean, the base of the sport is relatively straightforward. Kick a ball,
Well,
put it into the net, right? But
yeah.
the reality when you're playing against opposition, when you start getting into the technicality of the sport, it becomes fairly complicated. And when you're
Mhm.
talking about team sport, even more so. So any athlete that has gone, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a team sport. You could even be talking about like a table tennis athlete or a swimmer or anything really. But
Mm.
that aspect of having to the drive to go through the learning process of failing, trying again, failing, trying again, failing, trying again. Nobody starts off with a first place medal and stays with it for
No,
the rest of their life.
very rare. That's like, that's not a unicorn. That's I don't know, a decacorn or
I
something. I
mean,
don't know
to
what
be honest with you, I think when growing up, Michael Phelps probably lost a few swim meets before he became the most dominant athlete in his
probably
sport.
most.
Michael Jordan had lost. He was a low ranked draft pick, and then he became the greatest of all time. No matter what any LeBron fan says, it's still Jordan.
When you've been across the table from founders, because obviously you're kind of talking now about figuring out the right kind of profile, it's hard, but you kind of know roughly what you're looking for. But
Hmm.
what kind of red flags have you ignored that when you're in front of a founder, they're saying certain things or they have a certain edge? Like,